Yeah. It's trying to record. It's telling me that it's trying. Can't say a word. Thank God for technology. Where would we be without? Oh, it looks like. So the topic is the difference between these two young men, and at the very bottom of our reading at 272, we're introduced to this problematic fact, which has been touched upon already earlier, that Yitzchak loves Esav, while Rivka loves Yaakov. So the fact that Rivka loves Yaakov for the Zohar is not problematic at all. Who wouldn't love Yaakov? But the idea that Yitzchak, of all people, loves Esav, who the Zohar is convinced is a man of out and out evil, how can Yitzchak do that? So that's where we're going to start dealing with this a little bit, along with the difference between the two of them. So we're at 273, the top of the page, and this is a continuation of the previous citation. And Esav is described as Esav ish tzayid ish sadeh, a man of the field. So who's going to read for us, please, as we go? Beryl, there you are, because you got the good lighting. Very good.
A man of the field. What does this mean? Robbing people and murdering them while pretending to be engaged in prayer? Trapping them?
That's not a question. That's a statement. What does this mean is the question, and then robbing, etc. That's the answer.
A man of the field, for his allotted share was...
Wait. Let's do one piece at a time. Okay? So, a man of the field, ish sadeh, is the way that Esav is described. And now we have the Zohar unpacking what does that mean? What does it signify? So we first of all we had the idea that he's a hunter, okay, and we in the bottom of 272 we understand that being a hunter is not such a good thing. He's compared to Nimrod, who was the first hunter, the mighty hunter, and Nimrod is a bad guy. So Esav is also a bad guy. And the ways that the Midrash and the Zohar inherits the Midrash, the way that the Midrash explains this is that he's a vicious, bloodthirsty man. And he's not just out there hunting game, but he's hunting people. And that's what Ish Sadeh, a man of the field. Robbing people, murdering them, but that's the hunting part, right? So what is the Ish Sadeh? While pretending to be engaged in prayer. So, and then trapping him with his mouth. Trapping him is Isaac. So, as the note explains, the Sadeh is an echo of when we meet Isaac as he is first encountering Rebecca. Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. He went out to meditate or to converse in the field, in the Sadeh. And the rabbis understood this to mean that he is davening, he's praying. He's out in the open field, communing with the Creator. And again, traditionally, this is mincha, this is the afternoon service. So Yitzchak is also an Ish Sadeh. Yitzchak is also a person of the field, of connecting with all of God's life-giving nature. So, what about Esav? So the Zohar is not fooled. He's an Ish Sadeh, meaning that he purports to be a man of prayer, but he's not really a man of prayer. He's really the Ish Tzayid. He's really the hunter, and when he's going out into the field, he's really going out in lurking and searching to trap people and to do them no good. But what he purports to be is a spiritual man, just like his father. And that's, of course, going a long way to try to explain how Yitzchak identifies with Yaakov, with Esav, right? That he thinks that Esav really is a righteous, gentle, prayerful, soulful person. So that's the first part of it. And then prayer, of course, is for the Zohar the two main ways that we should utilize our powers of speech. God created us as a species that has the sacred power of speech that God created the world with. God created the world with speech. And then God gives us the gift of speech. So how should we use speech? So for the Zohar, there's two ways to use speech: prayer and Torah. Words of Torah should be the words on our mouth, and also words of prayer. All other ways of speech are suspect, if not outright betrayals of the gift of speech. So he's an ish sadeh, he's a man of the field. He shows himself to be supposedly a man of prayer, but he's not. He's trapping him with his mouth. He's trapping his father with his mouth. This actually circles back on the hunting part. The verse says kitzayid befiv, right? He put game, he put hunted game in his mouth, right? How does the verse exactly read? We have it completely cited here.
Which one do you want me to read?
I'm looking for the hold on. I'm looking for the verse itself, chapter and verse, so we can cite the chapter and verse. That's the next verse. So it's verse 28 in chapter 25. Right? Vayehav Yitzchak et Esav ki tzayid befiv. Rivka ohevet et Yaakov. Isaac loved Esav after he was introduced as Ish Yodei Tzayid, Ish Sadeh, a person who was skilled in hunting, a man of the field. And then the next verse is Vayehav Yitzchak et Esav. Isaac loved Esav ki tzayid befiv, because there was hunting, or there was captured game, hunted game in his mouth. In whose mouth? So the simplest explanation is that Esav used to feed him really tasty food. So, and that's what won Isaac over to love him. But that doesn't reflect very well on Isaac. So the Midrash changes it to kitzayid befiv, in whose mouth? In Esav's mouth. Esav's mouth was cunning and was a kind of like an entrapping vehicle for Esav. He would use his mouth to mislead his father. Look at 113.
Okay. Trapping him with his mouth, based on a midrashic reading of Genesis. He had a taste for hunted game. What does Sayed Befiv mean? Sayed, he hunted, i.e. trapped. Righteous Isaac Befiv, with his mouth. When Esav came in from the outdoors, he would say to his father, "Father, should salt be tithed?" Isaac was amazed and said, "This son of mine is so punctilious with the mitzvot." He asked him, "My son, where have you been today?" He replied, "In the house of study. Isn't this the law concerning such and such? Isn't this what has been forbidden? Isn't this what has been permitted?" But such words he trapped him with his mouth. Therefore, he, Isaac, loved him.
Okay. So Esav is the duplicitous one. Esav knows how to play on his father's weaknesses. And Esav makes up these phony questions in Torah. And then his father says, "Wow, he's so thoughtful. He's so concerned. He's so careful. He asks, the most punctilious, the most detailed, the most strange questions there. Of course, the answer, you don't tithe salt. Salt is not a vegetable. It's not an organic food that grows from the ground. So of course you don't tithe it, but that's Esav's trapping, right? He takes an outrageous idea, but he shows that by that he must be such a passionate, devoted, follower of the Torah, that he's looking to follow the Torah even in places where we would never even imagine. So this is the entrapment that he played on his father. Again, just to say the something that we've said in different ways, this picture of Esav is the direct opposite of the picture painted in the Torah. Right? The picture that's painted in the Torah, and which is acknowledged in other parts of the Midrashic tradition, is that he is actually a very concerned son who takes care of his father. He feeds his father. He makes sure that his father has really good, tasty food to eat every day. And he doesn't simply, ignore his father or get away with doing the minimum to have this old man, not starve to death. So the picture we have in the Torah is of a very devoted son, a very, a dedicated and hardworking son to fulfill the mitzvah of kibud avayim, of honoring his parents, and specifically honoring his father. So that's the simple understanding of the story. If you just read the surface of the story, the Zohar is convinced that it knows better. And the Zohar says, no, don't be fooled. All of that is, to trick you. Really, he was never good. He was never nice. And he was never gentle-hearted. He was always scheming to fool his father. Who does that sound like? Sounds like Jacob. That's our image of Jacob. Our image of Jacob is that he's the schemer, and he's the dishonest one, and he's the one that fooled his father, deceived his father in the end with his, with his outfit, and with saying that he was really Esav. To this day, it becomes a big, big problem of how to look at Yaakov. So the Zohar tries to preempt this problem to a certain degree by, first of all, throwing it all on Esav. Esav is the trickster. Esav is the dishonest one. Esav is the one who betrays his own father. He manipulates his father all the time. And as we will see, that's what makes the comeuppance that he gets satisfying. It's poetic justice. The manipulator is out-manipulated. The trickster is out-tricked, and so on. So this is the way Esav is being portrayed. We continue now. A man of the field, second paragraph.
A man of the field, for his allotted share was not inhabited land, but rather desolate places, wilderness, and fields. So a man of the field.
Okay, so there's a short note that this means that this is the domain of the demonic. For the Zohar, in the Zohar's sense of geography and landscape, the open spaces are dangerous. The open spaces are unpredictable, and the open spaces are vulnerable to attack. When a person is out on the road, they are easy prey for highwaymen and for all kinds of other risks and dangers, wild animals. So being out in the open is not a safe thing, in the Zohar's psychology, and there's a lot of truth to that. Where is safety? Safety is in numbers. Safety is in civilization. Safety is where you have enclosed spaces where you know that there are other people around. If somebody calls out for help, then like Kitty Genovese, Zichrona Livracha, then she's sure to be answered by somebody who's going to hear her call and come to her rescue. Of course, that was the scandal, right, of that particular story that happened whenever it was, 50, 60 years ago. But the Torah has this image also. The Torah says when a person takes a woman by force, so it depends where it happens. If it happens in the city, then she will yell out and she will be saved, and then the person will be abducted, and convicted of being a rapist. But and if she doesn't call out, if nobody hears her call out, then obviously it must have been consensual. But in the field, even though nobody hears her call out, that's because there's nobody there. So that place is ripe for abuse. That's the place where the rapists will have literally a field day. So the outside spaces are the uncontrolled, unbounded, unenclosed spaces, and those are the dangerous spaces. So
Rabbi?
now what the Zohar is saying is, Esav ish sadeh. Esav was a guy who loved that kind of boundlessness. He didn't like boundaries. He didn't like rules. He didn't like limitations. He was literally the outlaw, right? The person who went out into the open spaces where he could get away with whatever he wanted to get away with. So we have a number of ways of looking at this field as indicating what kind of bad person Esav was. Somebody wanted to say something.
Yeah, and yet they are big proponents of going on these walking discussions,
So
as opposed to
I have a book to recommend to you if you're interested in this problem.
yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. Yes, exactly. So that's one of the paradoxes of the Zohar, is that the Chevraya, the companions, are always going out into the open. They're always on the road. Of course, there are different levels of wilderness and openness. There are certain highways that are traveled by a lot of people, and then there are roads and paths and dirt roads that lead to nowhere. So the Zohar calibrates these kinds of things and talks about it in different ways. But here the Zohar is using this image for that basic quality that the open field is a dangerous place. Where does the first murder take place? Cain kills Abel in the open field. Right? It says they went out to the field, and then he kills them. He kills them. So the field is looked on from the very beginning with a certain amount of fear and trepidation. And he's a man of the field. Okay. Yes? Good?
Now,
Go ahead, Beryl.
now you might ask, how could Isaac be unaware of all Esav's wicked deeds, seeing that Shekhinah accompanied him? For if Shekhinah did not abide with him, how could he have blessed Jacob when he later did?
Right. So now the Zohar admits that it has painted itself into a terrible corner, because the Zohar has built up this whole image of Isaac uniting with Shekhinah, that this is his attainment, and this was his struggle, and he succeeded. And now the Zohar says, so if Isaac is such an accomplishment, such an accomplished spiritual figure, where is Shekhinah when we need her? How could he be so foolish, so blind, as the Torah tells us? How could he not see what was plain right in front of him? And even if he personally didn't see, remember we had that discussion all the way at the beginning of this story when the son of Rabbi Chizkiah says, "What's going on with Isaac? How could Isaac have possibly been fooled like that?" Do we remember what the answer was then? So the answer is a couple of pages back. It's on page 268. Right? So there the question was, Beryl, you have it?
I have 268.
Good. So start from that boy. So
That
not your Yehuda's.
son of Rabbi Yehuda asked, if so, why didn't Isaac love Jacob as much as Esau, since he knew he was destined to arise from him with 12 tribes? He replied, well spoken, but every species loves its own kind and is drawn to its own kind.
Keep going.
Come and see. Esau issued red, as is written. The first one came out ruddy, quality of Isaac, severe judgment above. From whom issued Esau, severe judgment below, resembling his kind. Since every species follows its kind, he loved Esau more than Jacob. As is written, Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for hunted game. Here is written, because he had a taste for Syed, hunted game, and there is written, hence the saying, like Nimrod, Gibor Syed, a mighty hunter before Yud-Hey, Vav-Hey.
Right. So we read all this once upon a time. And here we have, again, the same connection with Nimrod, the evil man who rebelled against God. And he's a hunter. Esau was a hunter. But there the answer was, and you know what? There's something about Isaac that is connected in common with Esau. Esau is red and ruddy, and that's the color of violence and of punishment and of judgment. The scary part of Isaac, the pachad, the fear part of Isaac, is actually, in some way connected to that very harsh and evil aspect of Esau. So we had that already. We completely understood it, and we completely unpacked it, in every way. So now we come back here, and there the question was phrased in a certain way, right? Why didn't? Okay, let him love Esau, but why doesn't he love Yaakov also? The answer is, well, but Esau he loves more. It's not that he didn't love Yaakov, but he loves Esau more because he sees that little piece of himself in Esau. But now the Zohar goes a little further and says, he could like Esau as much as he wants, but he has to be able, in the end, see through him. He has to be able to see that Esau is a phony and that Esau is really an evil, dangerous man. So how could he not, when he gets to trying to think about planning what he should do, how does he seem to be oblivious to Esau's true nature? Why doesn't Shekhinah just tell him? Shekhinah should sit him down and say, look, you find certain qualities about him very, very attractive. There's a certain quality of attractiveness that every outlaw has for conventional people. It gives us a sense of, ooh, wouldn't it be fun for all of us if we could all break the law and get away with it? But you have to face the facts. The facts are that this guy is a murderer. So just, control yourself. Why doesn't Shekhinah sit him down and tell him this? So this is the hard question. Okay? And Shekhinah, says the Zohar, didn't run away from him. Shekhinah was with him the whole time, because after all, otherwise the blessing never would have been able to be given to Jacob. So what is the role of Shekhinah in this, in this drama? So next paragraph.
On 268 or 273?
273. We're back to 273.
Okay. Now you might ask, how could Isaac be unaware of all Esau's wicked deeds, seeing that Shekhinah accompanied him? For if Shekhinah did not abide with him, how could he have blessed Jacob when he later did? Well, certainly Shekhinah dwelled in his home, dwelling with him constantly, but she did not reveal it to him, so that Jacob would be blessed without his intention, rather with the intention of the Blessed Holy One, as it had to be. When When Jacob entered the presence of his father, Shekhinah entered with him. So Isaac perceived in his mind that he was worthy of being blessed, and he was blessed with the intention of Shekhinah.
So somebody want to explicate this little turn of perspective? How does the Zohar explain it? Okay, the Zohar is watching this. This is like watching one of those real intriguing shows, where the plot really keeps on thickening, and then a new layer gets revealed to us, and something else that we didn't see at all. Oh, it was right there, and it's happening. So that's the way the Zohar is unfolding this story. Does anybody want to put in their own words what they think the Zohar is trying to tell us?
There was no tricking involved. That Isaac was fully cognizant of.
No tricking involved by whom?
Isaac was not fooled.
Isaac was not fooled. He knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah, that's.
So is that our takeaway from this paragraph? What about this part? Well, certainly Shekhinah was with him constantly, right? But she did not reveal it to him. Sounds like there's some kind of trickery or withholding evidence or lack of communication that we would have expected. And wouldn't we expect Shekhinah to tell him the truth? Wouldn't we expect Shekhinah to tell Isaac, you're being misled by certain, partial forces that you're privileging at the expense of other things. I'm Shekhinah. Let me set your mind, to rest here in a simple way. This is the facts. These are the facts, right? So Shekhinah, we would expect Shekhinah, she's with Isaac the whole time. What's the point of having Shekhinah with you if Shekhinah doesn't tell you anything? Craig, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz, where he says, you have to find these things out for yourself. You can't be spoon-fed everything. You've got to, if you want to make the next step, you gotta figure it out for yourself.
So that would be one way to look at it. But what happens when they don't figure out for themselves? Is it okay? Is it okay for a person to just keep on going with this big, gigantic mistake? What's the responsibility of Shekhinah down the line if that's the disaster that we're heading for, right? Isaac is oblivious to the fact that he wants to help out a murderer.
Again, maybe it's like with Abraham, he has all these tests, but God knew that he would come through, and maybe this is Shekhinah's thinking, okay, Isaac is, he's stumbling right now, but he can do it.
So, but in the end, he doesn't. Because I don't agree with Rich's reading of the Zohar. The Zohar does not understand Isaac as doing this without being fooled. His starting point of valuing Esav is not in and of itself dispelled. Shekhinah never tells him the truth. Who is Shekhinah?
We've identified her with Rivka.
Rivka is Shekhinah, right? We had that before also. And that brings us right back to the simple understanding of the story. Something is amiss between between Yitzchak and Rivka. There's two loving people, right? They're very close to each other. They love each other. Later on, they're going to have an open-hearted conversation about what's best for their kids. But here, nothing, right? Rivka sees the truth. From the Zohar's perspective, Rivka is not fooled. Rivka knows that Yaakov is the good guy. But somehow or other, Rivka never tells Yitzchak. If we're talking about some trickery or some subtle kind of manipulation, we have it already here. And the Zohar doesn't want to blame Rivka. The Zohar says it straight. It's Shekhinah. Shekhinah is not playing fair with Yitzchak.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is it because of the limitation of
Because of what?
The limitation of Isaac is representing judgment.
Exactly. Precisely. That's what we're going to get to in a second. So what we have here, the Zohar is building up now the explanation. Shekhinah purposely deprives Isaac of that good information that would have changed his mind. He would then have actually understood without putting on the clothes and without all the other kind of stuff. Yaakov would have been able to walk in free and clear, just as himself. And Isaac, had he been told by Rivka / Shekhinah what the truth was, how matters really stood about Esav and Yaakov, he would have then blessed Yaakov on his own. He would have given in and said, of course I have to bless Yaakov. But Shekhinah does not do that to prevent Isaac from blessing Jacob of his own accord. That's what it says here, right? So that Jacob would be blessed without his intention. Shekhinah is taking out Isaac's intention from the game. Shekhinah wants Jacob not to be blessed by Isaac. Shekhinah will be, Isaac will be, Esav, right? Jacob will be blessed not by Isaac, but by Shekhinah and Kadosh Baruch Hu themselves. And of course, who is the Blessed Holy One? Who is the Kutchabrichu? Who is the Kadosh Baruch Hu?
It can be Jacob.
Jacob needs, so it's not that Isaac has to come to it himself. Right, what Craig was suggesting. That Shekhinah has faith. Come on, Isaac, come on, work this through yourself. Work a little harder. No, it ends up being that Jacob needs to elicit the blessing himself by the grace of Shekhinah, bypassing Isaac, cutting Isaac out of the loop without his intention, rather with the intention of the Blessed Holy One, as it had to be. It had to be this way. So when Jacob entered the presence of his father, Shekhinah entered with him. Isaac has been with Shekhinah constantly. And now Shekhinah has abandoned Isaac because Shekhinah wants to cut Isaac out of the game. Jacob enters with Shekhinah, and then Isaac perceived in his mind that he was worthy of being blessed, and he blessed with the intention of Shekhinah. Isaac is being played, and Isaac is being manipulated, and then Isaac is not even Isaac. Isaac is simply overwhelmed by Shekhinah as he sees Shekhinah enter the room and thinks he's blessing Shekhinah. He's actually blessing Jacob. So the whole blessing act really is an act of deception. It's an act of deception by Shekhinah against Yitzchak as Vura, as Midat Hadin. We're going to see that in the rest in the continuation as the Zohar keeps explaining it. Yeah, Mark.
Is that why we pray that mercy should overwhelm judgment?
Always.
Right.
I mean, this is not why. We always pray that because judgment is too close to evil. Yeah.
I couldn't hear that. What was Mark's statement?
Mark says that Mark asked, is that why we always pray that mercy, compassion should overrule or should overwhelm or should envelop judgment? For instance, in the high holidays, we say that. We say, just as Abraham overcame his own initial feelings, now we ask you, God, to overcome your feelings of anger at us and let your compassion overwhelm your judgment. Right? When in the Talmud, when the high priest sees God, which of course is another Yom Kippur kind of image, God says to Yishmael Kohen Gadol, Yishmael the high priest, says, Barcheni b'ni. He says, bless me, right? Bless me, my son. So it's a reversal of this Isaac story. And Yishmael is taken aback. How can I bless you? How can I bless you? And he says, bless me that my mercies should overcome my judgment. That's what it is. So that is always our blessing, always our prayer. And that's the dynamic that the Zohar constantly describes, this tug of war and the necessity of the right-hand side to overcome the left-hand side. That's why the right-hand side is always privileged and always comes first, and is always meant to be, in the end, the all-encompassing one. The image comes also in the Song of Songs, Smolo tachat lerosho, v'yimino techapkeni. First, he puts his left hand under my head, and then he hugs me and embraces me with his right. So that's the idea of the left, and then the right coming on top and covering over the left. As a traditional prayer gesture, many people have the practice of placing their hands on their heart or on their chest, with the right hand over the left hand, so that the right is always on top and in control and embracing and overruling the left.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
In traditional Christian theodicy, one of the arguments that evil is somehow mitigated is that without evil, you don't have the possibility of doing good to mitigate evil. Is that something like what's going on here?
So I don't think that's what's happening here. I mean, you can never get away from that whole way of thinking. It brings us back to our eternal question: what the heck is evil doing here altogether? But with regard to this drama, it's not about mitigating evil. It's about getting rid of evil. It's about shunting evil aside, right? And in that sense, Isaac, because he's complicit or he's too close to evil, he's got to be neutralized, so that then we can bump off evil. That's what we're going to see. Let's see the rest of this, and we'll see how that plays out.
Are we on 274 now?
Exactly.
Come and see. Jacob was boiling a stew when Esav came in from the field, exhausted. Jacob was boiling, Rabbi Elazar said. They have established that this was for mourning over Abraham. But if so, the verse should read, Isaac was boiling a stew. However...
Wait, type, stop. Good, thank you. So, according to the Midrash, why is Jacob cooking up this porridge, or this pottage, or whatever it's called, this lentil stew? Why is he cooking it up? Because lentils is a food of mourning, and this was the Shiva for Abraham. Abraham had just died, and now the family is sitting Shiva, so Jacob is cooking up the Shiva food. So Rabbi Elazar says, if that's the case, then who's the mourner? Yitzchak is the mourner, not Yaakov. Yaakov is the grandson. Yitzchak is the son. So Yitzchak should be the one who's in mourning, sitting Shiva, and who has to have the lentil food. I mean, it's not the strongest question in the world. In general, that's exactly what the extended family is supposed to do during a Shiva, is to take care of the mourners so that the mourners don't have to do all of this kind of stuff. They should be taken care of. But Rabbi Elazar is going to use this to keep on building this case about Jacob and Esau. So, and of course, it's just always interesting to remember that the stories don't overlap, but the lives overlap. Right? We finish with the story of Abraham, we go to Isaac. We finish with Isaac, we go to Jacob. But actually, the truth of the matter is that when we look at the chronologies of their lives, look at the numbers of how long they lived, it turns out that Abraham is able, theoretically, to see his two grandsons growing up and being actually, real grown-ups, real young adults before he passes away. And yet, of course, we have no records of what he was doing. That's more for the Midrash and for all the post-biblical literature. But anyway, Rabbi Elazar here says, let's take this one step further. Why is Jacob the one who is cooking up this food? What's that all about?
However, Jacob prepared that dish, knowing his root on the side to which he clung. Therefore, he cooked a red dish, lentils, a dish that breaks the power of red blood, to break his power. So he prepared it cunningly in the color of red, and for that dish he sold himself as a slave and sold his birthright to Jacob.
Okay. So this is before we get to the blessing scene. We're zigzagging back and forth. But in terms of the verses in the Torah, this is the next thing that happens after we get the report that Jacob is beloved by Rebekah and Isaac loves Esau. We get this story of the selling of the birthright, right? So the selling of the birthright happens when Esau comes back from the field. He's exhausted, and he says, I'm going to die if I don't eat right away. So give me some of that food that you're making. So it turns out that Yaakov has been preparing this dish with a premeditation involved. He says, Abraham is now dead. Now everything is going to be in the hands of Isaac, our father. Isaac loves Esau. So Esau is going to be empowered by Isaac if I don't do something quick. So what do I have to do? I have to somehow create a temptation for Esau that he won't be able to resist, so that by falling for that trap, he will weaken himself, he will break his power, and I'll be able to get a leg up on him. So what does he do? He chooses the lentils, not because lentils are a food of mourning, because if it was about mourning, then Isaac would be involved. No, he chooses the lentils because the lentils are red. And this is, again, kind of a standard kind of medieval concept that Esau is red, the lentils are red, they're going to be attracted to each other, they're going to be irresistible to Esau. Red is the color of blood, blood is bad, bad is murder, red is murder, red is violence. So when Jacob is doing this, he's actually laying a trap for Esau. He knows that Esau will be famished. He knows that Esau will be desperate to eat something. He could cook him up a nice steak. No, he's cooking him up a red dish that therefore this red dish will, because of its own redness, will be irresistible to Esau, but because he has cooked it up, it has the kind of like a magical power to negate Esau's own power. And Esau, in order to eat this irresistible dish, gives away his power to Jacob. Right? It's not about the birthright, in terms of who's going to own which field. It's about the power struggle between Jacob and Esau, with Esau at this point still potentially being aided by Isaac. So he has to break that power, break the power of the red blood with his cooking, sort of, he's basically, what do you do with it? When somebody does something to a drink?
Slip a Mickey.
Yeah, like slipping a Mickey, right? He's playing, he's doing something to the drink, right? He's making it look like it's a drink that Asa, but he has made this. Here we get back to intention, right? The intention, we're going to have to somehow subvert Isaac's intention. Jacob is going to have to be the one with the intention. Jacob is going to have to take the initiative. Jacob is going to have to subvert his brother's potential for evil. And he has to do that with a lot of shrewdness. He has to know exactly what makes Esav tick. So in that sense, he has to go into the mind of the evil, but do it so that he can outsmart evil. He has to think like Esav in order to be able to trap Esav. Okay. At that moment,
Jacob realized that for the sake of one goat offered by Israel to his rung, he would turn into a servant to his descendants, no longer accusing them. Throughout, Jacob dealt cunningly with Esav because of Esav's cunning rung, so that he could not prevail, would not be overturned.
would be.
Would be overturned, so that his house would not be defended by him.
Okay. So this becomes then not just a one-time issue, but it becomes a perpetual battle and a perpetual challenge. And this is where the Yom Kippur ritual comes in, right? This is the one goat offered by Israel. Actually, it's both on Rosh Chodesh and on Yom Kippur. We had that before. It's the same idea, the Sa'ir, the hairy red goat that is the scapegoat on Yom Kippur and is the Rosh Chodesh offering at the new moon. And these are the decoy offerings, right? They actually are not offerings to God. They're decoys. They're offerings that are, camouflaged. Just like Jacob was camouflaged to be like Esav, these are offerings that are camouflaged to look like sacrifices, but they're not. They're actually bait. They're actually entrapment for Esav, for the evil one, for Samael, for the Sitra Achra. So what happens is, this is irresistible stuff. This is food that the ravenous, famished, evil one just cannot resist. And what we do is we throw him a bone, we throw him the goat, and as a result of him being distracted, he then doesn't bother us and doesn't bother God with accusing us and with bringing up all of our shame and all of our sinfulness, because he's too happy with his own enjoyment of this gift that he thinks that he won from his poor brother, victim. So this is the ongoing duplicity and deception that is engaged in by Jacob, Israel, the people of Israel, in order to neutralize and negate Esav's power. So I just want to clarify, we did it a little fast. This is where Yitzchak, again, had to be cut out of the picture, because Yitzchak is the power of judgment. Yitzchak is not the devil, right? Yitzchak is not the bad guy. Yitzchak is a good guy. But Yitzchak is susceptible to being overtaken and used, deceived by the bad guy, right? That's what happened with Esav. Esav was able to manipulate Yitzchak, to fool Yitzchak, to give Yitzchak the wrong impression of who he was. And then with all of the goodness that Yitzchak embodies, that goodness is a dangerous goodness because it is susceptible to being used powerfully for the wrong reasons. This is very scary, right? This is divine power, which is good, and yet it's fearsome. It is to be feared. It is to be, if possible, negated or neutralized just the same way that the devil needs to be neutralized. Just the same way that the devil needs to be, put out of commission by giving him some busy work to do, so that we can actually do what's worthwhile. With Yitzchak, we had to have another kind of stratagem, but in a way, to get him out of the involvement. And this is now going back to the blessing scene. Had Isaac been informed by Shekhinah that Jacob really was the good guy, right? That's what we needed to actually happen. That Esau was the bad guy. Had Isaac actually had his eyes opened, he would have blessed Jacob, right, from his own being. And this is what the Zohar now says, and that would have tilted the balance, and then Jacob would never have been able to struggle with Esau and best him, because he would have then been just as complicit with Esau as Isaac was. Isaac, if Isaac was the source of the blessing, then he would have almost literally polluted or contaminated Jacob's being, so that Jacob would not have been as strong as he needed to be against Esau. He would have been compromised by the Isaacness within him, because Isaac is too weak to in his very fierceness. He's too weak to be carried away with what is evil. He's too open to being manipulated by that. I mean, we have a Torah reading this Shabbat, Pinchas. Pinchas is such a troubling story, right? Here we have this guy who takes the law in his own hands, and he kills, he executes these two people, and that act of zealousness or jealousness, right? Bekano et kinati, right? To be God's vigilante. On the one hand, it stops a terrible plague. It saves the Jewish people. On the other hand, it's scary as hell. Who is going to stop the vigilantes when they decide that you are the person who is dangerous? You are the person who is God's enemy. This is there were vigilantes killed Martin Luther King. Vigilantes killed the Kennedys. Vigilantes killed Yitzhak Rabin with total righteous rage, thinking that they're working in God's behest. They don't listen to the system. They don't listen. They don't have that patience with balance. Instead, they say, no, this is a crisis. I have to jump, and do it. So there's a righteousness that is so skewed by what they do, and yet that righteousness has an element of real caring for the good and the just. It's just that it's so blind to where the good and the just actually are. So if Isaac is fully empowered, then Isaac is too dangerous. Then Isaac will not be able to be overcome by the right-hand side, by compassion. So this is where we have to treat Isaac almost as if Isaac is Esau, right? And somehow get Isaac out of the way, right? To be able to make Jacob be as fully Jacob as he can be. What is the essence of Jacob? The essence of Jacob is that unlike Abraham and unlike Isaac, he harmonizes both of their aspects perfectly. He's not too much Abraham, and he's not too much Isaac. But he was in danger of being too much Isaac had the blessing set up gone the way we think it should legitimately have gone. Shechina, by rights, in all ethical judgment, she should have told Isaac the truth. But if that would have happened, we would all be done for. Right? We would have all never been able to survive judgment. We'd never been able to survive that, and that in itself is bad. So then judgment would have been hijacked and would have been subjugated to the service of evil.
Rabbi, I'm going to have to annoy you.
You're going to annoy me? How do you?
I'm going to have to annoy you.
Maybe you won't.
No, by doing what I always do that annoys you.
So you want to annoy me?
Jacob has 12 sons. They're not so hot. Finished.
Right. Okay, you know what? Sorry. You know, there's a story that Calvin Coolidge was once eating in a restaurant. Some people maybe know this story. Calvin Coolidge was famous for being very laconic. Right? He didn't say a lot. So one time the story goes that somebody sees him having dinner in a restaurant, and he goes over to him and he says, "Mr. President, I made a bet with my friend that I can get you to say 3 words." So Coolidge looks at him and he goes, "You lose." So that's it. So you wanted to annoy me. You didn't annoy me. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's definitely a question. And the simplest way of thinking about it is that Jacob is given divine standing. The word that you used once upon a time, right? He's the avatar, so to speak. Jacob is Tiferet, right? Abraham is Chesed. Yitzchak is Din, Gvura, Pachat, right? The 12 sons of Yaakov are the 12 sons of Yaakov. They're not anything, they don't participate in the divine. They don't participate in that dynamic. They're you and me. They are the people who inherit this dynamic and who are then charged as human beings to learn from it and to somehow put it into living practice in this mundane, filthy, problematic world.
What about Joseph?
And Joseph is a semi-avatar. Joseph is almost, but I think my point is substantially correct. And that's the tragic difference. You know, we have the story, we have the paradigms, we have the basis, and the whole Torah is about this. The whole Torah is about how we blow it again and again and again. We have clear revelation given to us on a silver platter, and then 40 days later we're running around dancing around an idol. That's what human beings are about. But that's not all they're about, because they can also be a righteous person and a giving person and a faithful person and all of those things. And some of those sons, maybe they're not totally impressive, but they have some amazing moments. Judah has an amazing transformation in his life. We should all be worthy of the kind of transformation that he goes through, the kind of growth that he goes through as a human being. Reuven has some very, very impressive moments. He does a lot of bad stuff, a lot of stupid stuff maybe. And then he ends up becoming, in his own dumb, stupid way, he becomes very clumsily righteous. So that's where we are. The guys that we're thinking about here and we're studying about and are on a different level. They're in a different category of being. Does that address something of what you're thinking about?
Yes and no, because the whole push to deify, or whatever you want to call it, Jacob, is that he's going to be given the opportunity to create whatever he creates.
So again, so there you go. So is the glass 90% empty, or is the glass 10% full?
I wish I have a glass.
No, we're the glass. We're the glass. That we have this little study group together. That's because Jacob won. And that's not nothing. It's tiny. It's a little slight little thing. But you know what? It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. So that's what it is to have a people. I'm going to read this. Other people don't like it so much. I think it's such a beautiful statement. It's a kind of an aspirational statement. Some people could see that it's a little sugarcoating, that it's actually not true anymore. But I like this poem. It's a poem by Charles Reznikov, who was a nice poet. He didn't make it big, but he was a nice poet. So I have to find it. It's in here. It's actually in our machzor. So hold on a second. Here it is. So no, yeah. Here it is. It's on page 342 in our Lev Shalem Machzor. Out of the strong sweetness. So this is a Samson image. Out of the dead body of the Lion of Judah, the prophecies and the Psalms. Right? So again, this is all addressing specifically the kinds of things that you're always mentioning. The dead body of the Lion of Judah, that kind of biblical, raw, completely, untamed, people, the prophecies and the Psalms. Out of the slaves in Egypt, out of the wandering tribesmen of the deserts and the peasants of Palestine, out of the slaves of Babylon and Rome, out of the ghettos of Spain and Portugal, Germany and Poland, the Torah and the prophecies, the Talmud and the sacred studies, the hymns and the songs of the Jews. And out of the Jewish dead of Belgium and Holland, of Romania, Hungary and Bulgaria, of France and Italy and Yugoslavia, of Lithuania and Latvia, White Russia and Ukraine, of Czechoslovakia and Austria, Poland and Germany, out of the greatly wronged, a people teaching and doing justice. Out of the plundered, a generous people. Out of the wounded, a people of physicians. And out of those who met only with hate, a people of love, a compassionate people. So as I say, the ending is more aspirational than it is descriptive. How loving and compassionate we are today is a good question. But 99% of that poem is absolutely accurate. And that's the amazement of it. We are the same lousy material, and we act that way so often. And yet somehow or other, we have squeezed out amazing holiness and goodness and compassion and generosity and love. And we've made a tremendous difference in the world. Whether we're going to be able to have the strength to keep on doing it is a very hard question, and it's the realest question that we face today. But the reason it's a question is because we actually have done it. If we never did any of that stuff, it wouldn't even be a question. If we were just, as shameful as sometimes we think human beings are, and they often are, and maybe, again, most of the time they are, if we were just like that, there wouldn't be any questions. We wouldn't be talking about this. All right. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Sure.
No.